Welcome to the Memorabilia of Hyas Chuck case on Klatawa 442. The first lodge in the Portland, Oregon area, the fifth lodge in Oregon. So it was the last lodge chartered in Oregon, and it was chartered in 1950. The first ordeal was in 1951. That should be 1950, November 1950, my mistake there. COSAS conducted the ordeal ceremony, and it was pretty good. It was held at Camp Millard, which no longer exists. It's out there on Eagle Creek in Eastern Oregon near Molalla. Not Eastern Oregon, east of Portland and Molalla in Clackamas County. The first item that they were given, other than their sash, was a neckerchief. It was a plain white neckerchief with a Douglas fir tree on it. You'll see it here in a moment. The lodge pretty much replaced the Camp Meriwether Honor Society of Viet Concilio. Larry knows that one because I bought a pin off of him months ago, almost a year ago. But that was the first honor society in the council, and the Order of the Arrow pretty much replaced that. As I was said, the first item the lodge issued was a neckerchief, this plain green one with a white tree on it. A lot of people said it was a camp neckerchief, but I talked to a couple former lodge chiefs, and this was the first neckerchief. And I put the Hyas Chuck letterhead, which I was able to grab a sheet of, well, it's actually printed onto a newer sheet, but I also got the letterhead from Hyas Chuck case on Klatawa. That's why I know how to spell it. About a year or so later, they added the arrow and www to 442 to it. And this is considered N1. This one for a while was considered first neckerchief until some clarification was made, and N.05 was, or 0.5 was generated. We're gonna in the new book, this one becomes N1, N2, and N3. The biggest difference between N2 and well, I'm going to say N1 and N2 here is the number of tree limbs that you see out here. The right side stayed the same, but the left side, it seemed like they grew a whole bunch more tree limbs on it, like somebody grafted some tree limbs into it. So that's the biggest difference that you can tell between these two neckerchiefs, is the number of tree limbs on the left side. And all of these neckerchiefs are up there in price. I think the cheapest I've seen this one go for was $1,300. This one went for about $1,800, and this one's $2K. So the neckerchiefs for Hyas Chuck are definitely the hardest to get items. Then there were 3 rounds. Some people say there are 4 rounds, but there's a variety of the first between R1A and R1B, and then you have R2 here, and there's some definite differences in here. The amount of whiteness around the thing. This is a single stitch, multi thickness stitch on the on the R2. A little bit of differences in the tree and the mountains, but basically this one's a little bit faded, this one's a little bit darker, and this one's mint. These two are mint. I don't know how this one got a little bit darker, but and I bought that one because I needed an R2. But or maybe it was just a camera, but the true colors of the patch are right here on the R1A and the R2. These are probably the easiest Hyas Chuck items to get. They range anywhere from $75 to $125, dollars to get. And these were also placed on a neckerchief, towards the end of Hyas Chuck case on Klatawa's life. These were used as well for neckerchief patches as well. We get to a couple of the hardest slaps in Oregon, but the F2 is way much easier to get than the F1's easier to get than the F2. The F2, you just don't see. The F2 was issued in 1960 and the lodge changed its name in late 1960. This has a rolled edge. Mainly, the kids that went to the National Jamboree in 1960 got a hold of this patch. It got traded a little bit, but it still, there was only maybe a couple hundred made. This patch was used from 1952 to 1959. There's a couple of varieties in it. There's a smaller arrowhead in it, and that is a notable variety in it. A lot of times it was debated for a while, but Russ Ragsdale held an what he called an F1A and an F1B together, and said that there was a distinct difference in the arrowhead. So but it wasn't enough to call it its own issue. So, and these by far are, this one, I got lucky. It's the most crispiest mint one I've ever seen, or that anybody's ever seen. And I got it for, a reasonable price of $500 from a friend of mine. And it cost me the same to get this one. I could have got this one cheaper, but at the time when I got it, I was way younger and said, I need a Hyas Chuck. I need it now. And so the guy said $500 and it's yours. And I said, fine, here's a check. This one I waited a little bit on, and a guy who was in hospice agreed to sell it to me for $500 because he needed the money for his hospice care. He died about 6 months later. But the funny story is, before the guy who was in hospice had this patch belonged to Ed Harris. This one's going to be short. I'm a little bit out of breath. We had some historical issues issued in 1975, and they're actually hard to get as well. Unbelievable as that sounds, these were issued for the 25th anniversary of 442. So they actually came out when the lodge was called Skyloo, and these came in a set with the Skyloo S2 silver mylar border, and it came on some special monochromic paper or something like that in a frame. But there was about I'd say 100 frame sets, and then probably 100 loose, and then there was probably about maybe 300 to 400 of the Skyloo S2 that was issued along with these two patches. These are neat. These were actually the first Hyas Chuck patches I got before I got the R's and the F1. Couple of side things. We had those legacy rocks back in 2015. You have one here at the DOAC display and one that's at the summit. The funny thing is the lodge advisor put in the correct spelling of the name for the lodge, and National decided to shorten it to put it on a rock. So I figured those were nice pictures. I was one of the guys who filled out the paperwork, so I know the lodge spelt the name right before National got a hold of it. The last piece I wanted to show you, Hyas Chuck has been remembered a couple of different ways. In 2011, I issued an Ed Harris memorial. Well, the Lodge Council issued an Ed Harris memorial patch using the old Hyas Chuck design. The only difference we made is we put Juan Lamonte 442 on there. The Lodge insisted that every patch had a Lodge totem on them, so we ghosted in a bear, and then I added the Ed Harris memorial to it. It's a we honored the legacy of two of the lodge, and one of the greatest members of 442, which was Ed Harris. Not only was he a patch trader extraordinaire, but he was a former section, lodge, and area advisor, scoutmaster, and roundtable chairman for my district. Ed did almost anything in the council except for probably being council president. And with that stops it today. So
what does that very long lodge name translate to?
River that flows from the mountains to the west. Oh, actually, it means mighty water that flows from the mountain, from the great mountain.
You happen
If
to
I
know which,
remember my Chinook jargon right,
Chinook,
it's,
okay.
Mighty Hyas Chuck is Mighty River. In case on Klatawa was something to do with the mountain.
Cool.
And the Mighty River being Columbia.